Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle and this is Sleuth by Type. This is a series I've started for March Mystery Madness that I find super fun. And so in today's video, I want to talk about senior sleuths. There seems to be a resurgence in the last few years of mysteries featuring senior sleuths. But when I started researching it, I realized that it wasn't a resurgence at all. It was a continuation of a long-running tradition in the mystery genre. I started with Miss Marple in the 1930s, and I discovered senior sleuths in every decade up until the present. It was consistent. Senior sleuths have always been a popular detective type in mysteries. Once I really got into it, I discovered certain categories that I'm going to share with you in this video. Now, I can't go into detail about any of these books because I have quite a lot. You can actually see the top of one of the stacks at the bottom of the screen there. But all the books or series that I mentioned will be listed in the description box below so that you can check them out further if something sounds interesting to you. So we are going to kick off the senior sleuths with the category of retirement community. I discovered this was a really popular category to have senior sleuths that are living in some sort of a retirement community. So first up, I found, of course, there's the Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This takes place in Kent, in England. This is a series, and it's a group of 4 people living in a retirement home. Sorry, a retirement village. Next up, this is Getting Old is Murder by Rita, Lakin. This is set in Fort Lauderdale in Florida. This is also a series, and the main character in this is Gladdy Gold. This is a really fun, cozy style mystery series set in a retirement community. This is Whack and Roll by Gail Oust. This is set in Southern California. It is also a series, and it focuses on Kate McCall and the Bunko Babes. I have no idea what Bunko is, so if you know, you could let me know in the comment section. I would find that very helpful. Next up, we have The Hangman's Row Enquiry by Anne Purser. This takes place in Suffolk, in England. The main character is Ivy Beasley. This is a series as well. And from what I can tell, this is a spin-off from another series that she does. Ivy Beasley is a character in that series, and so in this spin-off, she's the main character. Okay, we have Death in the Sunshine by Steph Broadribb. This takes place in Florida. It is also a series, and in this case, it's a retired detectives club. There's a number of different detectives who have retired in this community, and they form a club to solve mysteries. Okay, the J. Alfred Prufrock Murders by Corinne Holt Sawyer. This takes place in South Carolina. The 2 main characters are Benbow and Wingate, and this is also a series. We have Death in Sunset Grove by Minna Lindgren. This takes place in Finland. This series has been translated into the English, and there's 2 women in this who have created the Lavender Ladies Detective Agency. Super fun. Okay, and then we have Crash Course by Kathy Hogan Trocheck. This series also takes place in Florida. It's the Truman Kicklighter series, and it's a duology. And so I think as far as series that focus on just a single person, it's the first one where it's a man. Often it's women. The Thursday Murder Club, it's a mixture of men and women. And same with the Retired Detectives Club. Okay, and then we have Old Detectives Home by Mike Befeler. This takes place in California, And when I discovered what this was about, I immediately purchased this book because this sounds amazing. Fans of Sherlock Holmes, Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie, and more, hold on to your rockers. At the old detective's home, the top detectives of all time must unite to solve their most difficult whodunit yet, without killing each other, of course. Imagine a retirement home populated with such residents as an aging Hercule Poirot and a dementia-suffering Sherlock Holmes, and run by staff including Art Doyle, Dash Hammett, and Dot Sayers. In this lighthearted spoof of the mystery genre, every character is either a real person from the mystery writing world or a character from a classic mystery novel. On anything but a dark and stormy night, a dead body is found. The staff managers find themselves unable to control the unruly old detectives. Mix in clues and red herrings galore as this colorful cast of suspects investigate each other to solve the mystery of who done it. Doesn't that sound amazing? I am totally going to be reading this book very, very soon. Okay, the next category that I discovered was the unassuming little old lady category. This is also another pretty big category. This is one where it's the type of little old lady that you ignore at your own peril. Also, I discovered for this category, they all live alone. So they are alone in the world, unassuming little old ladies, and yet they are super clever and solve the mysteries. So first up, how could I not start with Miss Marple? This is a series from England. This one is 450 from Paddington. This is a series written by Agatha Christie. I think if you think of an unassuming little old lady sleuth, you're gonna automatically think of Miss Marple. The other one you might automatically think of is Jessica Fletcher. These take place in Maine in the United States. This is Killer in the Kitchen by Donald Bain. So she's a little bit younger, but I think she counts as, I'm pretty sure she counts as a senior sleuth. Okay, and then we have Miss Seeton, which takes place in England. Miss Seeton Draws the Line by Heron Carvic. Miss Seeton is a retired art teacher. And then we have Miss Silver. This series also takes place in England. This one is The Case is Closed by Patricia Wentworth. Miss Silver is a retired governess who is now a private detective. She actually takes cases for money, and she's fantastic. Okay, and then we have a new one to this category is Judith Potts. This series takes place in England. This is the Marlow Murder Club by Robert Thorogood. Judith Potts loves to drink whiskey. She sets crossword puzzles. So she's incredibly intelligent, very, very clever. And I really like Judith Potts, and I'm excited that there's a second one coming out this year. Okay, and then I also discovered Ivy Malone. This series takes place in the United States. I wasn't able to figure out exactly where. This is Invisible by Lorena McCourtney. And I'm pretty certain that this one has some faith elements. I think this was the one. I think so. But she definitely fits the unassuming little old lady category. Okay, and then Margaret Binton from this takes place in New York City. This one is The Condo Kill by Richard Barth. I don't know anything about this series. This is a series that I discovered, I think it's from the 70s, 80s. This is from 1985. Okay, and then one more in this category, and that is Kate Kennedy. This series takes place in Florida. Death Rides the Surf is the one that I have, and this is a series written by Nora Charles. Okay, the next category that I discovered was the octogenarian and nonagenarian category. This is senior sleuths in their 80s and 90s, which I find it super impressive if they're out there solving mysteries. So of course I wanted to start with Her Majesty the Queen. This is The Windsor Knot by S.J. Bennett. This takes place in England, and Her Majesty is the sleuth. Fantastic series. Okay, then we have the famous Dar murder mystery by Graham Landrum. This takes place in Borderville, Virginia. Harriet Bushrow is the octogenarian in this series. And I had to look it up, but DAR stands for Daughters of the American Revolution, I think. Okay, and then we have, this is Indian Pipes by Cynthia Riggs. This takes place in Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. And the nonagenarian in this series is Victoria Trumbull. I've never read any of this series. All of the titles had flowers in the names. Okay, and then we have Running Out of Road by Daniel Friedman. This series takes place in Memphis, Tennessee. The main character is Buck Schatz, who is an 80-something retired cop with memory problems. This is not cozy at all. So you'll have noticed most of these seem to be in the cozy category, but certainly not all of them. This one, as I looked at it, was definitely not a cozy. This one was very interesting. This is Hiroshima Boy by Naomi Harara. This takes place in Los Angeles, California, and the sleuth is Maz Ari, a Japanese-American Hiroshima survivor. So that is really interesting. I would like to read this series, but I want to start at the beginning. The one that I was able to get my hands on is actually the last one in the series. So I will be definitely looking for the first one because that just sounded so interesting. Okay, then we have Pretty Is As Pretty Does by Elizabeth Spann Craig. This takes place in Bradley, North Carolina. Myrtle Glover is a retired school teacher. It's interesting, once you start really looking into it, Florida and the Carolinas seem to be really popular places to set mysteries with senior sleuths. Also, kind of the New England area, Maine, Massachusetts, that kind of area. Very interesting. Okay, and then we have Retirement Homes Are Murder by Mike Befeler. This takes place in Hawaii, and our main character is Paul Jacobson. This is the same author who did The Old Detectives Home. Imagine yourself waking up in a retirement home, not remembering anything from the day before, and being accused of murder. Or consider a male Miss Marple enmeshed in a light-hearted memento. I thought that was a great description of what this book is about. Okay, next up, I discovered what I'm calling unexpected pairings. I don't have a huge amount in this category, but I think that if I really looked, I would find more. So the first one, I'm going to put the picture here because I don't have this from the library, it wasn't available, is Ladies Smith and Weston by Lisa Q. Matthews. This is a clueless 20-something party girl and a feisty senior who form a most unlikely sleuthing duo. It's set in a Florida retirement community. And then another one that I wasn't able to get a hold of is Hubert and Lil. This is written by Gallagher Gray, also known as Katie Munger. The main characters are T.S. Hubert and his auntie Lil. His auntie Lil is 84, and this takes place in New York. And then finally, we have Biggie Weatherford and her 12-year-old grandson. This is a series written by Nancy Bell, and they're narrated in the first person by the grandson. The one that I have here is Biggie and the Poisoned Politician. Okay, so that one was short, but I think there's more. If you know of senior sleuths in an unexpected pairing, let me know in the comment section down below, because I'm sure that that's a much bigger category than I was able to show here. Okay, let's move on to retired professionals. And by that, I mean detectives, assassins, lawyers, that kind of thing. So first up, we have Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Rayburn. In this one, we have 4 female assassins who are trying to retire. I am going to be reading this one very, very soon. I'm very excited about that. This one is The Deal Goes Down by Larry Beinhart. This is an ex-private eye who is hired to kill somebody. What's interesting about this book is that in the 90s or maybe the early 2000s, there was a series with him as a much younger person as a private investigator. And then this book just came out this year, last year, 2022. And he's older now, and he's retired from being a private investigator. So yeah, I thought that was actually really interesting. Okay, and then we have Once a Spy by Keith Thompson. Drummond Clark is a 64-year-old retired CIA operative with Alzheimer's, and his son Charlie Clark, a gambler in hock to Russian loan sharks. So yeah, that sounds interesting. These last couple are definitely not cozies. So if cozies aren't for you, you're gonna find something in here potentially that you might be interested in. Okay, The Concrete Pillow by Ronald Tierney. Dietrich Dietz Shanahan, a 70-something former Army intelligence officer and a semi-retired private investigator in Indianapolis, Indiana. Again, this looks cozy, but I don't think this series is cozy either. Okay, and then we have Miss Melville Returns by Evelyn E. Smith. This is written by Susan Melville. Sorry, Evelyn E. Smith is the writer. Susan Melville is a spinster art teacher and painter who becomes a freelance assassin in New York City. So this one kind of is the wrong way around, but I put it in here anyway because she's an assassin. And then last but not least, we have Self's Punishment by Bernhard Schlink. Gerhard Self is a former public prosecutor during the Nazi era, now a private investigator in his late 60s in 1980s Mannheim in a newly unified Germany. Doesn't that sound amazing? I'm totally keeping this to read. I'm pretty sure this one's the first in the series. I just think that sounds so interesting. This has been translated from the German. The other reason why I find it interesting is because in the mid-90s, I spent 6 weeks in Germany, most of them in Mannheim, and so yeah, I'm loving the idea of that book. Okay, that's it for that category, although I'm sure that there's others that I have missed. Next up, we have recently retired, or what I'm calling, you know, still really active seniors. So this category, unlike nonagenarian and octogenarian, we have, you know, people that are in their young 60s or later 60s, early 70s, but still very, very active. First up is Mrs. Pargeter's Pound of Flesh by Simon Brett. This takes place in the 80s. Mrs. Pargeter is 67 in the first book, which is set in a residential hotel for active seniors. Henry O. This is Scandal in Fairhaven by Carolyn Hart. It takes place in the United States, and Henry O. is a retired journalist. Arson and Old Lace by Patricia Harwin. This takes place in England. Catherine Penny is a divorced sexagenarian transplanted New Yorker. Okay, Murder at the Falls by Stephanie Mateson. This takes place in New Jersey. Charlotte Graham is in her 60s and she's an actress who probably should be retiring but is wanting to keep working. The Elusive Relation by Helen Macy Osterman. This takes place in the United States. I wasn't able to tell specifically where. Emma Winbury is the senior sleuth. She has a sixth sense and a guardian angel. So if you like a little bit of the supernatural in your series, you might want to check this one out. Thistle and Twig by Susan Soms. This takes place in Alabama. Jane Thistle is a British widow and Phoebe Twig is a Southern widow who are best friends, both in their mid-60s. Murder Talks Turkey by Deb Baker. This takes place in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Gertie Johnson is a 66-year-old widow. Tall, Dead, and Handsome by Annie Griffin, also known as Sally Chapman. This takes place in California. Hannah Malloy and Kiki Goldstein are very active senior sisters. When Did We Lose Harriet by Patricia Sprinkle. This takes place in Alabama. McLaren Yarborough is the senior sleuth in her 60s. Quaker Silence by Irene Allen. Elizabeth Elliot is a 66-year-old widowed Quaker meeting clerk in Cambridge, Massachusetts. A Prey to Murder by Anne Cleves. Anne Cleves actually wrote a bunch of series that are not set in Shetland, featuring that don't feature Vera Stanhope, or her new one that's set in the south of England. I've forgotten the name of the detective. So she did actually write a whole bunch, and this is one of them. So it's set in England. George and Molly Palmer Jones are bird watchers. So bird watching is a big feature in this series. So if that's something you're interested in, you might want to check that out. Something Wicked by E.X. Ferrars. This is also set in England. Andrew Bassett is a 70-ish retired professor of botany. Fox Tracks by Rita Mae Brown. This is set in Virginia. Sister Jane Arnold is a 70-year-old master of the fox hunt. The Cart Before the Crime by Joyce Porter takes place in England. The Honorable Constance Ethel Morrison Burke is described as a comic senior sleuth. Murder Among the Well-to-Do by Ellen Godfrey. This one takes place in Toronto, in Ontario, here in Canada. Rebecca Rosenthal is a 70-year-old Polish-born anthropologist. So that sounded really interesting. And then Rotten Apple by Edith Pinero Green. This takes place in New York City. Dearborn v. Pinch is a 70-something ladies' man helping where the police are not wanted. So there you have it. That was a really big category, I think the largest one, of the recently retired / active senior sleuths. And then I have one last category that I called Still Going Strong, because these are senior detectives who have not yet actually retired from their position. So first up we have Bryant and May from the Peculiar Crimes Unit in London. This particular one is The Invisible Code by Christopher Fowler. Bryant and May are, you know, late 70s, 80, definitely should be retired, but they're not. They are still going strong. And then last but not least is The Coroner's Lunch by Colin Cotterill. Dr. Siri Bybon is a 70-something national coroner in the 1970s in Laos. So that sounds really interesting. I've been wanting to read this for a while, so I'm keeping this one to read as well. So this was another really small category, but I'm guessing that if I really keep looking, I'm going to be able to find more. So let me know in the comment section down below if you've read any of these books, if any of these series are favorites of yours. Also, let me know if you know of any senior sleuths that are still going strong, they have not retired from their positions, or if you have found any unexpected pairings, a senior sleuth paired with an unexpected partner. Yeah, I find this super interesting. Do you enjoy senior sleuths as the detective? Because it is a consistently popular type of detective for mysteries from the 1930s. I would say even starting potentially in the 20s, because I think the first Miss Silver came out in 1929. So it's been consistently popular since, let's say, 1930. And yeah, so what is it about senior sleuths that we seem to like so much? If you have an idea, let me know in the comment section down below, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.